Hello, bonjour. Yes, I'm in the car, but we're not going far today. As you know, I've recently done a mini-series, as I want to call it, about people living here in France and basically their opinions of that and how things have gone from them, sharing their experiences. And I had one that was outstanding, but I couldn't do it because they couldn't come over from illness and things. So today, that is where I'm going. And it's to our very good friends Frank and David, who live, well, it's about a 5-minute walk, but I'm taking the car because I'm being lazy. So, and obviously I've got a few things to carry. So the next thing you see will be their interview. I still hate calling it an interview, but I am really, because I'm asking them a lot of questions. So I'm hoping that they won't feel too anxious. And I'm sure, to be honest, that they're going to put me at ease. So enjoy the rest of the video. Okay, today I'm here with our good friends Frank and David.
I'm David.
I'm Frank.
And Ralph, of course.
And Ralph.
Just off screen is Ralph, the lovely dog. Right, okay, I'm going to ask you the same questions as I've asked everybody else.
Okay.
With a twist, because you're on holiday. It's a holiday home, although you don't think of it as holiday home. You just say it's your other home, isn't it?
Yeah.
A second home. So
Maison secondaire.
yeah, exactly.
Second home.
And so, as I've just said, obviously, my next question would be: you live here full or part time? But obviously, you are part time, so it's a different situation to a lot of the other people I've interviewed. Obviously, they're my neighbours because they're literally
Opposite.
well, opposite. Yeah, if you look across the field, but otherwise, I've just said in the car. Actually, I said they're 5 minutes away, but I'm driving because I'm being lazy. But I just have to carry. Did you visit France much before actually deciding to buy here?
Yes. Together on numerous
Yeah.
occasions.
Yeah.
We brought my mother to France, and we came to France on our own.
Yeah. So I first came to France in 1966.
Yeah.
And
So,
you,
yeah, way before I visited.
Yeah. And I came for the very first time in 1971. When I was
So it's
14.
safe to say you've got a lot of experience with
Yes.
France.
Oh yes.
Yes.
So, what have I got here? So, and also, you in UK, you live. I think am I right to say
Yes.
you live near Cambridge. You're in
Yes.
Cambridge,
Just
Yeah.
outside.
and you're in the countryside there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, what is the difference between living in the countryside in the UK and living countryside here? Is there a difference?
You go first if you want.
I think the difference is that this is where we are in France. It's so quiet compared to the UK. We are seven miles away from Cambridge in the UK, and it's busy. Although it is a village and it is a proper village, it's a lot busier than here.
All right.
I think.
Much busier. The population's denser. The villages are much closer together. So although it is rural, it is not as rural as.
That is the
as
problem with the
part of
UK.
Romania.
Everything is in such a small. It's an island, so everything's
Yeah.
close together.
There's like-
We've had guests stay in the G, and they've come from the countryside, and we
yeah.
were just asking the same thing, and
Yeah.
they said, "But it is so different."
Yeah.
And we've got, here there's loads of, tractors and animals in the fields and everything. Whereas in where we are, there's one farm, and it's a small
Oh,
holding.
really?
There's one small holding.
Yeah,
Um,
but some of the
and then further away from the village is
Yeah.
more, but actually.
So yes, so it's
so
a
it's really
different,
very different.
sort of countryside.
Yeah,
isn't it?
very different. Very
All
different.
right. I've got my list of questions here, and I've asked them out of sequence, haven't I? So, what made you choose France as your place to buy in the end?
Okay, part of it was down to health reasons. Yours truly had problems, but we've been thinking about buying somewhere in France for a long time. And we wanted somewhere that we could get to in a day, and if I was ill, we could actually get back in a day if I needed to get back to the hospital in the UK where they know me. So part of that was because of that this area, coming to France, easy to get to, easy to get back to if necessary. But as I've already referred to, back in 1971 I came to France for the very first time to visit my pen friend in a little village not far from here, about 30 minutes from here, called Saint-Pierre-des-Landes. So I had an idea of what the area was like from a very long time ago.
So that's why you chose to come into Mayenne as opposed to Normandy, because obviously Normandy's even closer.
We looked in Normandy, we looked in Brittany, but it as it happens, this is just so... Most people go to Normandy or Brittany, and very few people come here, and that made it quite attractive for us.
I don't like you, but a lot of people haven't even heard of Mayenne, whereas Normandy, everybody knew it, because that's obviously with the war and all that sort of thing.
We have to talk about Le Mans, don't we? As the nearest big town that people usually but France, I think, rather than Spain or Greece or wherever else, because we didn't have to rely on planes. If we went to Spain or Greece, we would have been reliant on that.
So from here, you've got you're on Eurotunnel by car, and ferry by car. Other than that, it's swimming.
No, it literally, we can jump in the car door to door in 9.5 hours, 10 hours.
That's tops.
Yes, because so how long does it take you to get from Cambridge to the tunnel or whichever way you're going?
It depends on who's driving.
Okay. Well, say French driving.
On average, 2 hours.
Oh, right. Oh, it's not too bad then, is it?
Not too bad. And normally very early in the morning to avoid the traffic on the M25, because that's the big bugbear, getting from where we are all the way down to Folkestone and the tunnel.
And what if David was driving?
It's about the same. It's about the same.
So I assume you have to obviously stop often for Ralph as well. I'm Frank, okay, to use the facilities. Sorry. Okay, so that's why you chose coming into Mayenne. What about this village, Montrepoulet? What made you decide on here?
It wasn't specifically Montrepoulet, it was this house.
Right.
Originally, we were looking at various villages. We were looking at places. We were looking at properties in Javron. We were looking at places. Where else were we looking?
We're in Saint-Pierre-des-Landes, and I think we looked at a couple in Lassay.
In Lassay itself.
Priampé.
Yes.
But this house that we actually bought, I dismissed online as being too small. Oops. And I think Montrepoulet, we didn't know it specifically.
No.
When we first looked, but we quite liked the fact that it was real. It wasn't pretending to be. It wasn't prettified.
Yeah, I mean,
it was very real.
It's not. It's not maybe made touristy.
No,
which a lot of villages are.
It's kind of off the main tourist track. It's real deep rural France. The house that we've bought provided exactly what we were looking for. If initially only a small property, but it provided a private garden, parking at the front. We're in a little hamlet of 4 houses in total. All our neighbours are French. It feels real. It's not a tourist trap. I think that's what we found attractive. And we can sit at our dining table and look out over the fields to see the church in the distance and where Jan lives in the distance.
Well, so far we've not actually been out the front of the house, or the house is the garden, isn't it? No. The front of the house. We've not actually been. We could have waved.
Yeah.
So this. So choosing this particular house, what really stood out with this one?
The location for me.
It
was the fact that although it's in Montrepoulet, it's actually just slightly away from it. And the view from our house over to the church and to where your house is there's just something really pretty about it.
It's funny you say that, because on one of our early walks down that lane when we first arrived, and I turned around, I had that view. And that's one of my first photos I took, so I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah,
and it's the fact that the garden is the right size, it's private, and it's fairly easy to maintain, and the property, although it was all on one level, it provided a kind of lock up and go, because it's here as a second home, and we're not here all the time. We can feel quite secure about shutting it down and leaving it for a couple of months.
Touching on that, because that's another goal, which is probably further down my list, but garden. So you chose you wanted somewhere with a garden, but
Yes.
how do you find managing it because you're not here all the time?
Well, we call
Is
it a
it
garden.
difficult?
We call it a garden. It's actually a field.
It's like a field.
You know, it's if you are a neat freak, yes, it would be extremely difficult. Wouldn't it? You'd have to get someone in
Like
when
a
you're
proper-
not here.
Yeah.
Pedicured, they say.
Yeah,
Pedicured,
Yeah,
like,
something like that.
Yeah,
Something like that,
but
yeah.
we are
Manicured is what
Manicure.
it's not pedicure.
Yeah,
Manicure.
that's what you do with your feet. You know, it's-
Yeah.
But yeah, but no, I mean, like we the day when we get here, it's a case of a day. Well, it's a couple of hours in the garden hacking it down with a lawnmower. You know, and then but that's about all we do. So it's a couple of
But
hours.
you're usually here for a few weeks, aren't you? So it's to do that
Yeah.
couple of days or whatever. It's not
Yeah.
so bad.
We'll come and spend a month here, so we arrive and get it done in the first day or two, and then
It's a couple of days in the back, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then we've got a small front garden, and again, that's a couple of hours just to clear the weeds usually. But you know, it's pretty.
And coming in
nice.
knowing that that's one of the first jobs you're going to do as well.
Yeah.
And
isn't it?
occasionally, one of our neighbours has been very kind and brought his lawnmower in and cut the back garden
Yes,
for
so
us.
is he not still doing that then? Or
He hasn't recently.
Right.
Occasionally, he
Yeah.
still does
But-
that, but that's good.
yeah, you're not asking him
We're
to.
not
He
asking,
does it,
he's
he
just
does it
done
out
it.
of the goodness of his
Yeah.
heart,
No,
doesn't
no.
he?
I mean, we could get someone to do it for us when we're not here, you know, and you know, it'd be a few euros, but to be honest with you, we quite like the wildness of it. So
It's a wild garden.
Well, it's. I think it's a
Yeah.
growing trend, isn't it? People
Yeah,
like
yeah,
more of a
yeah,
natural
Yeah.
looking garden, and it's nice.
And we
It's
cut
nice.
the lawn around the seating area, and then the rest of it we just leave, and we've got ferns and daisies and all sorts of
Wildflowers.
flowers coming in.
Well, that's
you know,
it.
so,
It's attracting more
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
birds and insects
Yeah.
and stuff. And that, no, it's,
Yeah, so
I
it's quite
understand
nice.
that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so within the house, what sort of condition was it when you bought it?
It was habitable. We could actually come in, apart from giving it a damn good clean, we could then come in and actually use it. The previous occupants left a lot of furniture, stuff that we didn't want or didn't keep, but initially we were able to use. So we had somewhere to sit, we had somewhere to cook, we had heating, we had a bed.
I mean, like
And so on.
it was ropey, wasn't it?
It's
But
ropey.
it was habitable, definitely habitable. The bathroom was fine. There was a bedroom, and the kitchen was rubbish, but livable with for a few months until we got ourselves sorted.
But there was no major renovation works required in terms of the actual rooms that were here.
New
So the
kitchen,
roof, so the
wasn't
roof
it?
was
It
sound.
Yeah,
roof
the
was sound. The cellar was sound.
The
The
beams.
rooms are sound. We weren't actually we didn't have concrete falling off the walls or plaster falling off the walls very much.
All the windows were okay.
All the
weren't they?
windows
They were
had
new.
been
The
replaced
front
back in
door needed some
2020,
work, but we-
2000.
Yeah, the front door needed some work on it, but we've sorted that one out now.
Yeah.
And there was a new kitchen. We did need
We
a new
did,
kitchen, definitely. And then we had some electrics done,
I mean,
Initially-
basically, it was habitable.
and then
It wasn't a
we
major
And
renovation.
that's a big difference, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
then you've got to find if it's a renovation project.
Yeah.
You obviously, I mean, you obviously weren't looking for a renovation project.
no, we wanted
It's
something
not
that
something you wanted like a ton of work to do.
no, we wanted. Ideally, we'd have preferred a two-bedroom house. It was one bedroom when we first got it, but the loft was enormous, and it was so obvious it could be easily converted, very cheaply converted, which is exactly what we've done.
Yeah.
It was perfect, you know. So we thought, well, actually, that's a little bit of more work than we anticipated, but it was easy. And,
Yeah, so it's like you say, it's so much better if you can live in it while you're doing it. But it also, even though it wasn't a ton of work, you've been able to make it your own,
Yes.
what you want with it, without
which I
too
think,
much upheaval.
which I think we would have done anyway,
Yeah.
because even if it had been, fine, we probably would have wanted to decorate, and you know.
Yeah, I think even if you move into somewhere
yeah,
maybe that's all
yeah.
done, you're still going to tweak it.
I
aren't
mean,
you?
But what we
and
didn't want to do was have to put new windows in and start knocking walls down and sort of like have to replaster, do a whole load of joists, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. We just didn't want that kind of hassle.
So these windows that are in,
All there.
they were all,
Yeah.
brilliant.
all the windows were replaced in 2001.
Yeah, because that's another major expense, isn't it,
Yes.
as well? So
Yeah.
you might have to do that.
Yeah.
We didn't have to do
Oh, we
that.
had we put a wood burner in because
And we
it
put
had
a wood
it had a hideous fire there.
Open fire.
It was an open fire.
Yeah. So there's no regrets on your choice of this house at all?
No.
Not thinking, oh, no, why didn't we think of that?
No.
The only thing that I would have done differently, personally, is when we had the loft converted, I would have put an ensuite up there. That's the only thing I wish you could have done it when we had it converted.
So could you not still do that?
We could, but it would cost more. And we decided that actually we don't really want to spend that kind of money doing it now. It would have been much cheaper to have done it when we had it converted in the first instance.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I don't think there's anything else.
No. And the bathroom has only recently been
Yeah.
changed, but it was perfectly usable when we first moved in. But we've now got a walk-in shower
Now you've got
instead of a
a huge
bath.
shower,
Instead of a bath.
Yeah.
We're both of a certain age where
I
it's
was
getting
gonna
difficult
say,
to climb in and out of the
Two
bath.
men of a certain age is perfect. Exactly. I can't get in and out of bath, so
Oh, God.
I mean, Frank and I are of similar age. So.
Yeah, we're only 27, aren't we?
Yeah, it's about paper round.
Right, so the work she had carried out, you've obviously, like you said, you didn't have to have a roof done, but you did have electrics done.
Yeah.
So you had to, obviously that's not something that you can do yourself, so you got an artisan in for that.
Yes.
And did you use French or English?
For the electrician, English.
Right.
For the,
And I can't remember that. Was that my husband?
Yes.
It might have been. It could have been.
Yes.
It may well have
His name
been.
was Duncan.
So you've had that done.
The electric's
You've done
The
you
kitchen.
fitted the kitchen yourself,
Yeah.
didn't you?
Yeah.
Me, I've got myself and
Friend.
a
Friend.
friend fitted the kitchen.
Right.
The fire we got done by a French person.
Yeah.
He was in French trades.
Was it difficult to find him to do that?
No, at all.
What about language-wise with him? Was he okay?
It's amazing what Google can do, along with pidgin
Well, we
French.
We didn't actually have Google Traductor then, but I have a smattering of French, and it's got somewhat.
We got there, didn't we?
We got there. We got there. It was doable.
So how did you actually get him?
He recommended by the lady that we stayed with when we came to view houses.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And she was saying, he did some work for us in Les Balagite. Give him a ring and he'll come give you a quote. So that's how we got that one done.
Yeah.
The bathroom was done by an Englishman,
Yeah.
wasn't it? And so was the loft, actually.
So
Yes.
no problems with the
no.
language with the other jobs.
No. And
But again, even though they're English, but again, was it difficult to find them? Did you have to wait a long time?
Not particularly.
Well, we asked, and most people came in good time, or they told us that it was going to be a while.
Well, that's what you need, isn't it?
yeah,
For them
yeah,
to tell you
yeah,
up
yeah,
front
yeah,
that
yeah,
you're going to have to wait a while, because there's nothing worse than saying, we'll do it, and then to keep waiting 6 months.
I guess we had to. It was difficult to coordinate being here when they could start, because obviously we had to come from the UK. Occasionally, we had some rather nice people over the road who helped out.
Well, it's another awkward thing to think about, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
if you're not
yeah,
living here when the house is being done, you've really got it's a lot of coordinating to do. And like you say, finding someone that can maybe let them in for you or whatever.
You've got to think ahead,
also you get that are recommended who you can trust, who you can say have a key and get on with the work. And what happened with the bathroom is that the guy that did the bathroom would send us pictures showing us what work was being done, what he where he got to.
Yeah.
So we knew what was
work in
happening.
progress.
Work in
Good.
progress.
And also, I think that what we've done is we've learned to live with imperfections. There's just we could spend a fortune on the house if we wanted to get rid of every bubble on the wall and every bit of damp coming through. It's just
not because of the artisans you've used.
No,
just
the
way
age of the house.
And that's it is part of the character, I suppose.
It's a
isn't it?
centuries old house. We could spend a fortune, but you know what? We're not that rich.
Because you come from a very what is pristine a word to say? Is it? Perfectly done in
the UK. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's much newer.
It's
newer
house.
vibe.
Newer house. Have a whole load of renovations.
So it's quite nice in a way to have the two different.
Yeah.
Although I think you've said to me, I think at the weekend, didn't you, that inwardly it's very similar.
Yes.
Furniture-wise and things like that, and the way you've done it. And I suppose it's hard to get away from, isn't it? Because that's your taste,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
but the house in the UK is a 1980s built house. This one we think is probably built in around about the mid 18th century.
Yeah.
17
Slightly different
something,
then,
so
yeah.
slightly different.
Yeah.
And when you look at the beams on the ceiling,
Yeah.
the joists there, they're
Yeah.
enormous, great trunks.
So overall you've spent money on the house, but it's not cost you a fortune.
People pay a lot more for a car, you know. It's, yeah.
I mean, the house
Well,
itself.
you could say that at exactly the price of
the
house.
The house we bought it. We paid, I think it was £35,000 for it. For the house, and we spent.
We rented this now. We spent maybe 50, isn't it? You know, it's about 50 and job done. Really.
Let's say it's less than some electric cars, isn't it?
Yeah,
So it's ridiculous, really. Were there any problems with this house that you basically didn't anticipate? Something when you first viewed it and once you actually physically got the keys and moved in, did you find anything there that needed doing that you didn't think would need doing? Or
we had a leak, didn't we, in the plumbing downstairs?
Yes.
Yeah, just from the then bath. Going out, and there was just a leak in the pipe.
So it's
easy
but
to
it
fix.
was in the car if it wasn't.
Yeah,
That's
easy to fix.
I don't think so. Apart from the fact that the previous occupants, rather than working with the house, and the fact that it's a big stone house and the stone needs to breathe, that where there was some sort of dampness coming through, they tried to cover it up. And paint over it and use silk paint to try and
stop the damp was coming back through.
So instead of working with it,
they put some marine ply to try and cover this damp area, which of course just accumulated it more and more and more with vinyl silk paint. And then do you remember they put some polystyrene wallpaper on as well, just to really, really make it worse. And so that
to a point you can understand why they would do that, because they don't want to pay the money out, before they buy. But
we just
didn't declare that.
No, we stripped a whole load of paint off the walls, which took forever a day. But and then used chalk paint, and it's
not perfect,
not
but
perfect,
it's
manageable.
We're living with the stonework rather than trying to force it to do what we want. But I think the other thing to remember is if you've got a second home and it's an old cottage in the middle of rural France, that if it's left for a few months, it's going to get cold and it's going to get a little bit damp and a bit musty. And we always try and come out and be here at least twice during the winter, so that we spend a couple of weeks with a log burner going, with a dehumidifier on, keeping the house open aired. And
you had a bit of a shock when you got here this time, didn't you? Because it's one of the colder winters we've had, isn't it?
But even when we were working, because when we first bought the house, I was still working at least, wasn't I? We still came out in the winter for, even if it was just for 3 or 4 days, and it was purely just to get some heat into the place and get some ventilation in. That was the other thing that we did that we hadn't really thought through, was the ventilation. There was no ventilation in the house beyond,
the windows.
One air vent, wasn't there?
Two air vents in the bathroom.
So we
had no ventilation in the living area, but we've now had ventilation put in. Beyond that,
I don't think there was any other unexpected stuff, was there really?
Well, except like you say, you've put the ventilation in, but it's obviously still not cured that bit. But it must be helping to keep it down.
Oh yeah. And we had works.
Double glazing doesn't always help with ventilation, does it?
The other major job that we had to do when we moved in, the new septic tank, was part of the buying the house. We had to commit to updating and renewing the septic tank, and that happened. That was an expense we thought might be a possibility, but hadn't really considered.
We were told informally that the septic tank that was here was okay by the then current regulations,
and the owners.
But in fact it turned out that it absolutely wasn't. There was no way we could just make alterations to make it compatible. So
it's in the wrong location.
The people that lived here before, they're probably thinking, well, it's still working as far as they're concerned, even though it might not go up to current regs. So it's at the time that the house changes hands that the authorities get involved and tell you this is what needs to be done to make it compliant with today's regulations. So you knew that before you got the keys in a way?
Yeah,
or
we
you
could have pulled out.
Yeah.
Because that was brought. What's it called? Is it compromis? Yeah,
The
and then you had
compromis, yeah.
all the bits and bobs done,
Yeah.
the checks done, and it was in that period that we
Yeah.
realised we were going to have a new tenant. We could have withdrawn,
Yeah.
but we just thought, you know what, we like it.
Well, the thing is as well, you could have gone on and found the same problem in the next house.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, I mean, I think I remember right. I think we recommended someone to you for that,
Yes.
did we?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
So that part of it, obviously, that was it easier because
Yes.
you knew
Yeah, it
someone
was,
could
yes.
recommend someone.
Yes.
But do you mind me asking how much that ended up costing you? Because that's one thing that
Was it
people
Was
don't
it
always
about
expect.
About €7,000.
About 7,000, yeah.
Roundabout.
It's still quite a chunk, but
It's a
once
chunk.
it's in,
Yeah.
It's done.
it's there.
It's
And
done.
I mean, they've got a 3,000 litre tank.
yeah, I suppose
Might be
because
bigger.
you're not here all the time, I suppose you've not really had.
We've
to have it empty.
We've never had it empty. We're not here enough.
No.
No.
Because there are ones that don't have to be emptied as well, so
No.
it's obviously not one of those.
No.
Well, it's got a filtration system with it as well. So
Yeah. I think they all have to have
Yeah,
it. don't
so
they?
that's the ventilation and all that thing. Stop it
Yeah.
blowing up.
But and on that same thing, do you find it difficult having to adjust to? There's only certain things you can put down the toilet
Yes.
and all that, don't you?
yes.
Do you find that difficult?
It's not
It's not
difficult.
difficult. You just have to think about, well, what am I going to buy to clean the bathroom?
Yeah.
And again, you get. I found initially it was like, oh blimey, can you do this? Can you?
Yeah.
And then you think, actually, do you know what? It's not hard. You just look,
Yeah.
and you get used to.
What do you
looking
mean
at
by
it.
you just look?
Well, the label to
Ah.
make sure that it is appropriate for
See, I'd be thinking it'd be a real pain because I'm used to having a normal
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're used to a normal in UK,
Yeah.
then you got that when you come here. It's just
It's more, you can't put anything down the loo that that you
Well,
would
anything-
normally do.
but things that are
It's
full of putting things down the loo that are not things like bleach or anything that's going to upset the biological system in the tank.
And I think you're right, but nothing in France is the same as in the UK anyway.
No.
So you kind of always have to look to start with at the labels and that's what that is, and then it just becomes part of life.
basically every time you come over,
Yeah.
you're in a different mode on lots of
Yeah,
ways.
yeah.
Had you got a budget set for what works you thought you might be doing or anything?
Yes.
We did, didn't we?
Yeah.
And
When we were looking, we had a criteria, and
Yeah.
I wasn't academic, so I like criteria, and so it was like it's this much money,
Right.
and it will cost us no more than this, and that was either for a fully renovated house that we did no work to, or it had to include the rough price of any works to be done. We stuck
And
to
you
it.
did stick to
We
it, so it
damn
wasn't,
well
it wasn't
did.
hard to stick
no,
to.
no.
No, that's good.
We were very clear about
Very
what
clear
we
about
wanted
what
to
we
buy in the
wanted.
first place, because we had looked at properties where you look at the window at the moment and it looks out over the field. Below it, the wall was crumbling and the plaster was crumbling off the wall, and it was like the cracks in the wall. This is going to be more than a simple redeck. It needs renovation. It needs the walls replastering. It needs it securing. We won't bother with that. And we looked at some places where the heart went, yes, I want it, but the whole place needed complete kitchens, bathrooms, heating systems, you name it, everything, because there was no
So
running
you've got to
water.
rethink then, do
Yeah.
I
So
really
you
want
did
that
that,
people?
no.
Yeah.
Well, the concession
Okay.
to modern conveniences was one tap, wasn't it?
Yes.
And that was it.
Really?
Yeah, there was no loo, no
There
bathroom.
was no bathroom, no toilet, no
It was
no
beautiful.
kitchen,
There you
nothing. So it was like,
No,
It's good because very often
I
people
think you have to.
blow the budget, don't they, and then have to
Yeah.
start finding more.
yeah.
And then they can't afford the renovations. It's
But that initial outlay with the works that we had to get done in the house with the new septic tank and putting the kitchen in, then allowed us to increase the size of the property by 50% by going upstairs and using the loft.
and we got the kitchen we wanted, we got the bathroom we wanted. There's a balance, I think, between
Yeah, I'm
doing
just going to say,
too much
isn't
work.
it? Yeah.
And you don't want to spend all your time
working.
and doing,
No.
basically drudge. Who enjoys decorating, really? Well, I don't anyway. So,
Well, you've been saving money as well by upcycling, haven't you?
Yeah.
Getting some it's the furniture and painting. They've been doing well with that.
And the previous occupants left a lot of stuff. That we did keep some of it and use some of it.
It's quite common that when people buy somewhere, although it's getting less.
It's changed, isn't it?
Yeah, because they're now insisting they empty it, and yet we've had friends say, including yourself, had stuff behind and been really pleased that they've had stuff there that we had. Well, when we bought our house, what was the kitchen was the sink in the corner. The only thing we had other than that was like one of those brooms, you know, with the branches on, like the witch's type broom. That's what was leaning against the sink, and I think there was a cross on the windowsill.
Right.
But once we got our keys, even they had gone. They absolutely stripped the house. They couldn't even give us a broom.
The wardrobes are beautiful. There's a couple of dressers and things that they left, a mirror that is
and if you like them, they're going to last us lifetime again, aren't they?
But there was an awful lot of stuff that we just sort of went, this is going.
Now, obviously, we've touched on the fact that you come over by car.
Yes.
So, do you find it difficult driving on the left?
No problems whatsoever.
No.
Not even overtaking or anything?
The only time is if I'm driving and I'm sitting there on the right hand side of the car, it's difficult to see what's coming, but it's not a problem.
We've done a fair bit before, haven't we?
Yeah, we've done a fair bit before.
Once we've been to France with some friends, and we got a bit lost and ended up in the centre of Paris, which was a bit scary. We hadn't quite planned.
Lost.
We hadn't quite planned on that. But, and we thought, well, if we can deal with that, we can deal with anything, really. And
literally, we enter the train.
It's fine. It's not a problem.
Driving on the left in the UK, pop up the other side, pop out onto the right, and drive, and think nothing of it.
But I guess it's just become fairly frequent.
We aim to spend 3, 4, 5 months of the year here. It just depends on what else is going on, but certainly 3 to 4 months of the year we're here.
So even when you come over and it's late at night or anything, you're not sort of weary and forget.
No,
we come in the day, don't we?
We tend to come in the day.
That's a good idea, really. And obviously, and the recent thing, like that's happening in the UK as well as here, is the emission zones and things. Have you had to buy your emission stickers?
Is it Criteria?
Yeah,
we've got that.
Yeah. It's just a one-off payment, isn't it? Just buy it and then you got it.
It's about €7 or something.
So it's not worth trying to not get it.
No,
it's just pains
not
to get it, and that's because you think you must go through Rouen.
We come through Rouen.
Yeah, and that's the main one I think that you need it for, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we move on to food.
Food,
do you enjoy French food?
Our difficulty is that we're both vegetarian. If you want to go out and eat in France as a vegetarian, it can be difficult. If you go out and have pizza, fine. If you go out and have pasta, fine. But if you want to go and eat anything else or anywhere else, or if you go anywhere where they do a menu de la jour, they will serve a set menu, and if you say, could you replace the toque beet with an omelette, please? We're usually met with a resounding no.
The chefs are very stuck in the ways of some things, aren't they?
It's quite difficult.
But I think it's also down to price, that they do the set menu at a set price. And you know exactly what you're getting, and they know exactly what they're preparing. Therefore, to deviate from that, then starts introducing variables in terms of pricing.
Difficult for them.
Well, having said that, we've found now a couple of places where we can get, limited, but nonetheless there is a choice of food for us that we can go to. So we do go out occasionally.
And I suppose if you get a few restaurants that are used to you as well, if you book it, then at least they know up front and they can maybe prepare something different for you.
But we have found places where you can get things like galettes that can be vegetarian, and they will do omelettes, and it's doable, but you can't, as a vegetarian, eat in the same way that you might if you're a meat eater in France and enjoy the food. But we partake of and enjoy the pastries, the cakes, the bread.
And tell ourselves it's all vegetarian.
It's all vegetarian.
Well, that's the thing. So you're not sort of strict.
We
all
are.
you're as much as you can be here. I
We
suppose.
will avoid things that are clearly got gelatin in them, things like that. But otherwise, it's like, I'm sure this pastry is vegetarian pastry. Of course it is. You know.
So when you're obviously because of that, you're obviously having to cook at home quite a lot.
Yeah.
So do you find it any difficulties in getting your ingredients to what you would like? You would,
No,
do you
it's
just adjust to what you?
No, the food's lovely.
Yeah,
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I have a fresh fruit, veg. The French are much more seasonal. In what they do.
Definitely,
A lot more seasonal,
Which is good.
which is good. The other thing is the supermarkets have now started introducing a lot more sort of vegan and vegetarian options.
Even I've noticed that. Yeah.
If you don't mind eating kind of food that sometimes is highly processed, but it gives you a variety of textures.
Yeah,
and
you've got a
flavours.
choice. Yeah. I think even Lidl's and that have started.
Yeah.
to
I think
do-
it's also a mindset. If we made it a problem that we have to cook, then yes, it would be a problem. But you end up thinking, well, actually, you make it part of the experience. So you can go out to the markets, buy vegetables and fruits, and think about what we're going to cook. And because you're quite relaxed and laid back, you kind of put a bit more effort in and maybe what you want.
Yeah, I suppose you could stress about it, couldn't you? Yeah.
And okay, we haven't got the biggest kitchen in the world, but it functions. So yeah, it's
okay.
It's nice.
Yeah, you've got a stove, you've got a dishwasher, and a
Yeah,
microwave.
it all works.
Exactly. Do you actually have you found yourself having to go in the what they call the overseas aisle to buy stuff?
No.
Because so you do use just French ingredients.
Yeah.
Oh, well done.
The only thing that we will confess to in public anyway is that we do bring tea bags from the UK, largely.
Everybody I've interviewed has
Yeah,
said the same
yeah.
thing. The
Tea
French
and
tea
France.
they do the
And butter beans.
Oh,
Butter beans. You can't get them here.
Do you know,
except
it's
dry.
strange you should say that. When I interviewed Sharon, she said the same thing.
Yeah.
I thought I had seen them here. I don't
We
know
haven't
why.
got dried ones we have, but not tinned ones. And,
See, I'm going to have to make it a challenge now to see if I can
right,
find them.
if you do, let us know.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, beyond that, we just
just use what we
local
get.
brands.
Local brands, everything.
Yeah. Has Brexit now meant that you're limited to what you can actually bring over with you as well? Did you used to bring things over before?
We were lucky that we bought the house before Brexit actually happened, and so a lot of the hard heavy stuff when it first set up we were able to bring easily.
Yes.
But now it is restricted, isn't it?
I mean, so
Is it
what
10
we-
litres of paint? That's all we can bring over from the UK because paint in the UK is cheaper.
it's cheaper and
And
better
better
quality.
It is. They are getting better, I think. But yeah, it's. I mean,
It's easy.
we found a shop that does slightly better paint.
I mean, most things that we buy to eat, for example, we get here. Like David just said, we bring tea bags, and what we will do is sometimes for ourselves bring things like Marmite, and some of our friends sometimes ask us to bring them Marmite.
Yes. It's not that big.
No, because no, she's not sitting far from us at the moment. But things like that we can't get here. But otherwise, we just use French ingredients from the supermarket, and I don't think we've actually ever bought anything in the sort of Royaume-Uni section of the
Not now, but I think
Food
when we were first setting up, though, if you
We
think
might
about
have,
it,
yeah.
I think we might have exceeded. I can't remember how much we were able to bring in value-wise. Is it 300?
It's about
something.
360
Don't
euros.
quote me on that one.
It's about 360
And I
euros.
think we might have struggled then,
Yeah.
because when we first set up
Yeah.
a little bit. But then we would have simply not brought stuff from the UK. We'd have brought it here.
No.
Yeah.
It swings and roundabouts because there are some things in the UK that are cheaper in the UK than France, and vice versa. And in the end, you just go, that's the way it is.
We would have preferred Brexit.
Yeah, you
didn't
can't
happen.
constantly be comparing.
No.
And it's fatal to do so, to be honest, I think, because it's pointless.
I mean, talking about comparing, I mean, how would you, if at all, compare the supermarkets in UK to here? Do you think there's any downside to them here, or
They're not open as long, are they?
They're not
That's
open as
probably a good
long.
thing.
well, if you're, So I mean, that's another question. I mean, do you find that a problem?
No, not particularly, but initially it's remembering that sort of between 12 and 2, most places close and you forget and you go, why is it so quiet?
Yeah.
But the bigger supermarkets, the Hyper
Yeah.
in Mayenne, are open all day
Yeah.
long. But I love the fact that in Lassay, Les Chateaux, there is Intermarché, and they proclaim the fact that on a Thursday and Friday they're open all hours from 9 in the morning till 7 in the evening.
Yeah.
All day
I know what you're
long.
saying. Yeah.
And I guess
Because compared to UK, because UK is like 24 hours.
24
isn't it?
hours.
Because in Sundays most shops are closed and everything shuts. And that took us a little while to get used to. But again, it's become something we both really look forward to.
Yeah.
So does that
Yeah.
just meant you just had to sit at home with your feet
Well,
up?
sit at home, you
Or
find
you
it
go
in the
for
summer,
a
you
walk,
find
or
it
you
in
go visit somewhere that's visual, you know.
Yeah.
And
At least you've got Ralph that makes you go for walks as well.
and
we
it's
go to Vigreniers, we
Vigreniers
go
in
off
the
to
summer.
towns and go for
Yeah,
walks.
and that's the other thing. I mean,
Yeah.
summer here
Yeah.
is very, very different to the winter,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
just things just happen differently. And,
Yeah, but winter's got its charms. I love it when it's sort of like 4 or 5 in the afternoon and it's getting dark and it's cold and you've got a fire going. And it's there's something very nice
Yeah,
about
I
it
do
as
like
well.
it. And I must admit, it gets to a point where I'm starting to look forward to winter usually, and I think,
Okay.
can't wait to be able to light that fire. And
I
just
wouldn't
sit
go that
and-
far.
No, I do start to look forward to it. Just,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's the in-between bit where you're a bit chilly, but it's not cold enough to put the fire on, that sort of thing.
And delivery times as well, that's the thing that's really different, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
In the UK you get things delivered there and then almost, you know, or the next day. Here, it took us 2 weeks to get gravel.
What's...
Yeah, 2 weeks for gravel.
Sometimes that can... It may just be luck, I think,
Yeah,
sometimes,
maybe.
on the amount of people
Yeah,
that are ordering,
yeah.
because we've had things, and they've turned around and said, this afternoon, oh, hang on, we wasn't ready for that, you know, and then we've suddenly got to run home from the shop because we weren't going to be there.
Yes.
I didn't
Because
expect
that's why
it.
we've sometimes found it difficult to pin people down to delivering the wood for the burner in the winter.
Mm.
Yeah.
And perhaps not being here all the time makes it more difficult because we lose some flexibility. So if we're here all the time and they say, oh, we can do it in a couple of weeks' time, of course we're not here.
But we started emailing them in advance saying
Yes.
we're coming to France. As soon as we've got a definite date of coming, we're coming on these dates. Is there any chance you can deliver whilst we're here?
Well, that's what you need to
And
do, is plan
it's
ahead.
not
It's planned,
difficult.
isn't
is
It's
it?
not, I mean, too many things. I mean, you know, people will expect things because they're, especially a second home owners, and those that aren't out of the habit of the UK, was be expecting it to happen like that.
Immediate, yes.
And
It doesn't.
no. I mean, it doesn't anyway, just because, especially if you're using French artisans, they're very laid back and you don't always they just think, well, I'll get back to you, and 6 months later you might still be waiting for your quote or something. You know?
We're still
We're
waiting for a
still
quote
waiting
from
for a
the
quote.
bathroom.
You are, that's
We're
right.
still waiting for a
Yeah.
quote 18 months on, but we've let that one go.
Yeah, I think you've had the bathroom done since.
We've had the
Yeah.
bathroom done, it's been done. It's kind of a case of c'est la vie, that's the way it is.
Yeah, exactly. So, is there any? Well, I think I know, but people watching won't know. But any food items or drink that you take back with you from here?
Wine.
Why?
Wine.
Primarily why?
Cider. Cider's
Yeah, but
fantastic.
with alcohol. And it has to be honest, it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
So, in comparison, like your favourite wine in the UK,
Yeah.
how have you got an equivalent here? Then what's the price?
We
comparison?
buy bottles of Roche Marseille here for about €3. In the UK, you'd pay if you ordered it about £11.
Can you buy Roche Marseille
Yeah,
in
you
the
can,
UK?
you
See,
can.
I never found it.
Yeah,
to
we
be
can, but
honest.
usually you have to do it online.
We've found some wine here now that's sort of like, I think it's €9.
That's
In
lovely.
the UK is in the high
15,
teens.
16.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
See, I've
considerably
been here so
cheaper.
long now, I've forgotten prices in the UK.
And sometimes we'll take chocolate home.
Yeah.
Again, it's good quality chocolate, relatively cheaply.
And that's what, because of the dark chocolate?
Yeah. Occasionally, not very often.
No.
Oh, we always take a loaf of bread and cakes
On the journey
on
back.
the journey home.
Well,
So we've got our treat when we get home. We get back to the UK.
But apart from that, it's
When you say cakes, what sort of cakes?
Curry best.
Right. Oh, because it's not proper cream in that,
No,
is it
no,
either?
no,
Because I don't.
no.
What is there? Is there any rule regarding that going back to UK?
the UK
dairy
is
and
much
everything?
easier.
Yeah.
Although they might be introducing some checks now.
Yeah.
They plan to, but it's a little bit more relaxed. I mean, in terms of alcohol, bottles of wine, if it's the normal bottle of wine of 75 cl, you can take 24 bottles per person. So between the two of us, we can take 48.
And they make the
bottles
most of that.
And then on top of that, you've got cider allowance,
top of
beer
cider,
allowance.
cider,
Well,
beer,
that surprises me that they're all
yeah,
different
yeah.
allowances.
Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
different.
And that you
So
can
that-
even take champagne
Yeah.
separate.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we don't run out, do we?
We don't know that.
No, it's not at
But,
all.
but the awesome thing
There's
is,
usually loads
it's
of them
not,
by the
it's
time.
not that we have a drinks problem,
No.
but it's half the price.
But you can get much nicer wine, cheaper than what you
Much
can get in
cheaper
the
than
UK.
the UK.
And I think that's where
Yeah.
we've got to. Just like, do you know what? That's
we
the
do that.
advantage.
We stop that.
And I can imagine you taking French wine back, and every time you drink that, you're all feeling
Well, it's-
connected to here as well at the
yeah.
same time. How often do you frequent the boulangeries?
Every day.
Do you?
Yes.
Is that because then you take?
No, we go every day. We go.
Right, just in case.
I say every day, virtually every day.
Virtually every day.
It's get bread for breakfast because we are bread freaks, and also puddings. Cakes for our dessert in the
Yes.
evening.
Do you think?
Every day.
Do
So
you think
it's very French.
it
go
is
to the boulangerie
definitely to
in
go
the
and get
morning
your
to
bread?
collect your
It's
bread.
not. I think it's tastier bread and cake than what you can buy in the supermarket.
But the nice thing is that one, we are frequent visitors here. We have gotten to know the people that run the boulangerie, the patisserie that we go to. They now know what bread I want when I go in the morning.
Not
and
the
they say
Ritz
hello.
No.
And they ask me when we go back to the UK, when are you coming back? They remember me when we come back. If we're away for a couple of months, it's got to a point now that people know us.
Yeah, well, it's like I was saying about the restaurants before.
Yeah.
Once you get,
Yeah.
known,
Yeah.
it is nice, and that's I think
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
when you're on
Yeah.
holiday. Sometimes you do those things more often maybe than the French do.
Yes.
Towards the they know people have been here for years,
Yeah,
but it was nice.
But it's just like yesterday. We were in Marseille. We went into the Tabac bar for a beer after we'd walked Ralph. And the owner, the proprietor of the bar,
We don't drink-
comes up to. We don't drink masses in the bar, but the proprietor of the
Go
bar.
on, tell the truth.
No, we don't. We
Spill
have a
the
small
beans.
beer, a pretty beer, and the proprietor of the bar now comes up to us and says hello and shakes our hands. And it just makes us feel as though we are welcome and we belong. Even
Yeah,
though we're
and you're home,
part-time.
yes.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
part-time residents, but it's also home. It isn't just the holiday home. It is somewhere where we feel happy and comfortable and
That's
people are
good.
welcoming.
Yeah.
And our neighbours in our little hamlet are the same. Those directly next door.
Going back to that, about the neighbours, do you feel you've been accepted?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Completely.
Who
Do
can
they
Christella-
cope with your lack of language? Or
Oh yeah, we cope with gesticulation, but I mean I do have some French. I'm learning it. I've had to learn French to get people to come in and remove hornets from the.
No, you say learning it.
Yeah.
How are you learning it? Are you using apps? Going
We
to
use
classes?
we use Google Translate. I've got various discs that I will go use or dictionaries if I need to look at new words. When we're out and about, if I see road signs and things, I'll look it up and see what it means.
We
And
make
just
our-
actually generally talking to people.
Sometimes, it's the best way,
It's
isn't it? When,
talking,
as and when you see
yeah,
something,
yeah.
right, get the dictionary
Yeah,
out. We do that.
yeah.
And I've been here for how long?
Or if you haven't, because we don't carry a dictionary, so that's where Google Translate comes in quite handy.
Yeah.
If you see something, what on earth does that mean? And type it in, and it's like, that's what it means.
What if I need to go and ask
Yeah,
for something in the shop or whatever? Using the French that I have that I learned at school. Sorry,
I do apologise for our hands.
Using the French that I do know, I've built upon it because you've had to do it when we're out shopping and things.
Yeah, I think like sort of phrases you use often.
Well, I think, as you said, though, at the end of the day, we've muddled through enough to be able to get someone in to sort some the hornets out from the chimney. We've had a leak in the mains water pipe that the water board had to sort out, and we managed to contact them on the phone, which was quite impressive actually.
That is impressive.
And where did we go? Oh yeah, we had to go to the vets to get Ralph's passport updated because there was an error with it, and the British authorities were telling us if you don't get this updated, we won't let you travel with Ralph. So we've had to go to the vet using my French, using Google Translate. I managed to go in and be able to make myself understood, speaking with a vet who spoke some English. So we were kind of speaking a mixture, but between all of those kind of ways, we managed to communicate what was the problem, what we needed, and we've got it resolved, and we're now going to pick up his passport and it's updated and leave.
Sometimes in those situations you think, right, okay, we've done it, and then you walk away and think, did they really understand me? Will it arrive?
Well, what we're finding, I mean, my French is not as good as Frank's, but what we're finding is that so long as we absolutely try our very best to have a go at something, usually the franglais will then kick in on both sides, so long as we at least start the conversation in French. And I do remember once we were sort of like doing our pidgin French, and it was all very jumbled up, and this guy just turned around and said, would it be easy if we spoke in English, mate? You know, it was like,
isn't that frustrating though? You think, just let me try.
But he let us struggle, didn't he, for a good few minutes, and it was like, well done you.
Or I've gone into the pharmacy and said, I've come in, I need this, I need that, and I'm doing it in French, and he responds, and the pharmacist responds in English, and I say, we're in France, do it in French, and he'll say, but I want to practice my English.
But I don't think they don't do that unless you start it off with French.
Yeah.
That's what they're finding.
Yeah.
If you go in and speak English immediately, then they'll almost
just always go straight into English.
No, they go the French. I think so.
Yeah, that's what we're finding. Whereas if we have a go in French, come what may, they are usually far more willing to engage with
us in both English and French.
That's interesting.
And that might just
or do you find that they like to talk English?
Well, obviously, I think because we've been here longer, we straight away go into French. If they hear us struggling, they will then just say that I can speak English if you'd like, or they will keep going in French, and then that after a few minutes you get a bit panicky, thinking, okay, you're not going to offer English, and obviously English.
And at the moment, I really ought to take more time to learn French more thoroughly. But there's nothing like being in a situation where you have to rely on what French you've got and then try and cope with someone who doesn't speak English. Eventually, with much laughter, gesticulation, and talking like a child, one gets under. You get understood.
They're always saying if they know you're trying, they're going to appreciate it. But I mean, you just say you don't. But I mean, that's quite common in couples that one would speak more than the other.
I'm always the one that gets pushed through the door first. Yeah. You go and talk to them.
You've got ill.
Yes.
And Frank gets regular temperatures, and we'd run out of paracetamol, and it was a Sunday, and you couldn't get hold of anything. So off I trotted next door in my schoolboy French, asking if they could possibly lend us some paracetamol.
Right.
It was very, very funny, and I'm probably got it all wrong, but they understood what I wanted.
At least the words the same, it's just pronounced slightly differently as well.
But whether they understood exactly what was wrong, I don't know.
On to that subject, you're talking about paracetamol. I mean, have you ever had to go to a doctor or the hospital when you've been here?
No.
No.
The only thing I had to do at one point, because I'm diabetic, is that I was having problems with the new sensor, and in the end I needed to buy a whole new testing equipment. So I had to go to the pharmacy and explain that I was diabetic and that I needed to buy a testing kit and finger pricks and all the rest of it. But I managed again using Google Translate. Managed to do it.
You probably could have gone to a doctor with that, probably. But to be honest, it was just easier to sort it out ourselves. But no, we haven't. But
No.
we have anticipated that potential. And so,
Yeah, because as second homeowners, it's
Yeah.
because not if you were here all the time, you'd
Yeah.
obviously have a doctor, you'd have a card set up and
yeah.
everything. So I just wondered if it was any more
Well,
difficult.
we
It is a
do-
worry.
we do- It is a worry because we both have health issues. Sometimes it's quite complex, but what we've done is actually provided an English and a French translation of the problems that at the moment. It's for me. We need to do the same for you. But a translation of what the problems are, the medication I'm on, and so on, so that if there was an emergency, we could present that at the hospital and say, "This is what the problem is. Can you help?"
If you don't mind me bringing it up, that's the situation. Is one of the reasons why you didn't want to come full time as well, isn't it?
It was part
Because
of
you were
it.
worried because your doctors know you.
Yeah. I mean, I had
so
the
it
same.
was a big concern for you.
I've had the same surgeon looking after me since my surgery in 2009. So there's an
Ralph
element.
agrees.
Yeah. But yeah,
There's an element. Yes.
it wasn't that we didn't trust French this
No, no.
time, because we know that the health outcomes in France are outstandingly good. It wasn't that at all. I think it was the nuance of language, wasn't it?
The nuance of
When
language.
when you go to the GP or you go to a hospital appointment, the language that you need to be able to describe pain or describe what's going on, it's so far away from our skill set in French. And I think that's
part of it.
if I'm
But it's also the fact that the same surgeon is still looking after me 14 years on, and it's that intimate knowledge that he has, because he's actually did the surgery and still looking after me.
It makes you feel more secure, I mean, so I understand that because obviously I've had to use medical care quite a lot, and just over time I've just got a bit more confident in knowing that their language has got better. You do panic a little bit when you try and to understand them, and if anything more, because I'm worried about looking stupid. So I think I'm a lot more confident with it now because I know I've done it so much.
But
I think initially it's going to be scary for someone.
I hope we've done the right things. We've got the translations. We've worked out where the nearest hospital is. And we know how to get there now. And we know the emergency numbers. And we've got all that written down. And we're all ready for it.
Well, you've done a sensible thing.
And obviously
just being
insurance.
prepared,
We've got insurance now.
But we still have the global health insurance card.
What used to be
Is that
Brexit,
what the
EA
now?
Used to be,
it used to be. But
It's not that now. What is it now?
It was the EHIC. It's now the global health insurance.
Oh right, okay.
But it's exactly the same.
Same thing.
And the same arrangements still exist, despite the fact that we've left the EU. That if in an emergency or for pre-existing conditions you need emergency care, it's reciprocal. That's still there. So,
I mean, talking about that as well. I mean, has your trips and being able to come in, everything been affected a lot by Brexit? It's probably a sore subject for these two.
I mean, for me, the biggest downside is the fact that we can no longer bring any food that we've got left over in the UK. We have to give to food bank or to neighbours.
apart from
tea
bags,
there's a few
Marmite,
things you can bring in, but
baked
not
beans.
fresh food. We
Right.
used to be able to bring vegetables in, dairy and stuff. So now we have to plan that one. That's
But
the biggest pain in
otherwise-
the bum for me.
And it's the 90 and 180 day rule.
Yeah.
And having to count back. But we never spent more than 90 and 180 days anyway. So in terms of the time, that's not an issue. It's just the bureaucratic having to work out.
Well, I've done it. I mean, obviously everybody can do it in the end because you're doing it regularly, but I can't understand a lot of it. I mean, a friend of Duncan's recently, he was here for 3 months went back for 3 months.
Yeah.
He's just come back for a month and had to go back again, and he's now just been fined €200 because they said he'd gone outside his 90 day.
Yeah.
But why do you think?
Because it's the way of
it's
counting is
the way it works.
Yeah.
Because he's only been here a month. How does that work?
That's it.
You would, at the day you enter France, you count back 180 days. How many days in that 180 have you spent here? So if you spent 90 here, you can't come back until you've got days that you can use. So if when we arrived this time, I counted back. It's quite complicated. Basically, if I arrive tomorrow, I look back over the last 180 days. If I've only spent 25 days here in the last 180, that means the balance between 25 and 90 days I can spend in France.
Right, so it is, you can only spend 90 days out of 180.
At the moment.
Well, if you did,
so if you did 3 months, went back for
that's
3
30,
months.
60, 90, yes. But then
Then
it's 6 months that he would have to wait. Because you said he came back within...
No, he was in the UK for 3 months, came back
but
here for a month,
Yeah.
then he's had to go back early,
Yeah.
but he was already, and they'd done him for €200, saying he was outside of his...
Yeah.
I don't know if there's an error in it being... I don't know what they do, do they stamp your passport?
So your passports get stamped back.
It's often that things like, people often sometimes forget to count the day that they're travelling to France and the day that they're travelling back to the UK. They forget to include that in their calculations.
I'd be useless, I'd never get it
Oh,
right.
it's one of those
months. You can't do it in months. You have to do it in days because, of course, months have different number of days in them. It's a pain in the bum, to be honest. But unless I think if you're only coming in the summer, it'd be a bigger problem because we do split this throughout the year. It's not a major issue for us, but it is bureaucratic.
It's bureaucratic.
And,
I think in terms of Brexit,
it's happened.
It's happened. There's not a lot we can do about that. It could be difficult if you make it difficult. If you just go, well, this is the way it is. Let's work with it. And as long as you make the effort.
But the new ruling that's coming in will make it a little bit easier,
hopefully,
or just enable you to stay longer.
There's a technicality which is stopping being able to do 180 days in one go, so that you don't have to count.
Oh right, so it's still not.
It's
still not finalised.
There's a technicality that's been raised that in terms of the legislation, the idea that you could get an automatic visa as a homeowner pre-Brexit. Some MPs didn't like that because it was a change to the original legislation. It's a technicality which is saying they're going to revisit so that
it is that there will be a change to apply for a visa to enable us to come, people who've got a second house before Brexit, to come for 180 days in a year.
Any time.
And at our discretion, really.
Yeah.
So that's only if you bought pre-Brexit.
As far as I'm aware.
I don't know.
I don't know about that.
Oh, right, okay. So I just wondered because
I think
don't
initially
know.
they say pre-Brexit.
Right.
We got in before Brexit.
But it does take more planning than it used to because we're hoping to go to Greece for 3 weeks later on in the year, so we've got to really think about the planning of our visits to France as well. So it's been organised.
Well, I think I said to you at the weekend that I'd seen this. Just something caught my eye on the news stories about it's possibly going to take people coming from the UK over that could take them like 14 hours to get through the passport control and everything like that. And I assume that's connected to what you're saying, but what they
that's as far as no. That's good. That is that they're introducing the biometrics.
Right.
So the initial visit that you do, you will have your photograph taken, you will have fingerprints done, so that it's all on computer. The next time, it should be quicker. It's when they introduce it.
So it's the initial thing.
Introduction, so that everyone will have to have their photograph taken, their fingerprints taken. So that will cause a delay. Our plan is, and not everyone's going to do this, is that we would travel at a time when people don't normally travel.
2 in the morning.
2 o'clock in the morning.
We used to do that.
But out of school holiday time, so we won't travel. We don't travel when the schools are off.
Which I think is probably a good idea anyway, is to avoid the school periods. The school holidays.
I just said to Sharon this morning about that. I said, if it's going to take that long, you would hope that they'd have a queue for like if I was over in UK on holiday and coming back, being a resident here, that there would be a different queue for you to go in, to go straight through rather than get stuck behind.
Yes, because
I wouldn't bank on it.
No, but that's why my dreams.
I think that would be the case. But hopefully that would be the case because the delays of 14 hours would be to process at the busiest times all those people going through who need the biometrics doing. The pictures and the face. Because the next time you go through, you'll be able to go through a gate and just
It could also be a little bit of building it up to expect huge delays, and actually in reality it might be a bit longer than normal. You know?
Yeah, it's a bit like to sort of might give you the worst scenario, and then it'll look a lot better when it's not. Yeah.
But it comes down to the fact that the first time you travel, you will have to have your picture taken, your fingerprints done, so it's biometrics. And the next time you come through, there will be hopefully a lot of gates, and you will just present yourself. And you will go through.
Again, we're going back to this holiday home. How do you think the cost of living compared to the UK here? You know, with bills and food.
I think
it's comparable.
Some things are more expensive, some things are cheaper, and put it all together, I think it works out pretty similar in some respects.
I mean, for example,
food is a bit more expensive, but wood is considerably cheaper.
Wood is?
For wood, for the fire.
Or for DIY stuff.
In the UK, DIY stuff's cheaper than here. In fact, the UK petrol prices are cheaper than France, and have been for a while. Your alcohol's cheaper here.
That's the only time really you have to bear in mind, don't you, the difference, the exchange rate and things like that. But sometimes you just think, I can't keep doing that, you know, you just got to accept it's what it is. But
that's what we do.
But I think overall, generally speaking, we don't spend any more financially when we're in France than we do when we're in the UK.
Oh, really?
No, it's pretty, you know, unless we bought something unusual, like, you know, this time we bought a bed and so. Otherwise, it's pretty comparable, I think, overall.
But I think in France, income tax is far higher than the UK. But in France, the house taxes are far lower than the UK. You know, so it's.
You got any advice that you would give anybody thinking of buying?
Go native. Go native. When it comes to buying, don't. I would say we didn't bother with having an English solicitor.
I think it depends. If you're spending £3 million on a house, I think I would want a solicitors and I'd want the whole works. But if like us, you're spending a relatively modest sum of money, we went the way the French do it, which is with the notaire, and the notaire acts on behalf of both the buyer and the seller. But they do that because they are paid by the state. They're not paid by the buyer or the seller. For the services that they provide, so they are completely independent of both. Do you go down the route of a full English survey of a house, or you do it the French way, and which is slightly different? What's it called, that certificate you get? I forgot what they call it. Is it CI? No, it's not CI, it's the car, isn't it?
And it's the seller, but it's the seller that produces it.
The diagnostic?
Yes, the diagnostic.
Something like that.
But they don't go in for a full damp survey or whatever, but they tell you basically the property's sound, it's not going to get flooded, it's not in an earthquake area.
There's no termites.
They might say,
there's no termites.
Especially if it's something serious, they'd say, we recommend you do this.
Yeah, we had
but that was part of the. Actually, that was part of the thing that brought up the septic tank.
Yeah, and it also brought up the fact that it had a Calagas cooker, and that there was no ventilation in the house.
Slightly important.
But then this whole thing about a structural survey. Well, this house has been here for 300 years.
This is what. Exactly. You think, well, what if it's not visibly crumbling,
and it's built on bedrock.
So it's kind of like we weren't going to engage a completely different legal system in buying the house. We used the French system.
Is there a choice over that?
You can get an English solicitor involved. So you could get an English solicitor to act on your behalf, whilst the notaire acts on behalf of the seller.
Can you imagine how much longer that would take?
And the cost.
And the cost,
quite honestly.
Where the notaire acts on behalf and is impartial and acts on behalf. And we found, because, like I said, they're paid by the state, not by
A lot of people, we
themselves.
were thinking, oh, it's going to be a bureaucratic nightmare. You know, buying a house in France, it's, you know, there's famous stories of French bureaucracy, but actually, do you know what? It was so straightforward for them. Well, we found it easy. It was like once you've viewed the house, made an offer, the offer's been agreed by the people selling. You've got 10 days to change your mind, or 14 days, whatever it is, and then it's like that's it, legally binding.
Yeah.
And unless anything very untoward comes up. And it was less stressful because you don't have gazumping, you don't have all that
Just
kind of
thinking
thing.
that because you don't, do you? I mean, it's a bit like in Scotland, don't they?
Yeah.
I dare say
once you are
can't
committed,
gazump either, can they?
once you get past that 14 days, you are then legally bound, and if you do pull out, you're subject to a fine.
But I dare say that if, for example, we decided we want to move, I dare say that might be a bit more stressful. I don't know, but I can imagine that might be. Yeah. I mean, be realistic.
Be realistic.
And don't go for acres of land unless you want to employ people to look after it for you when you're not here.
It's always an ideal to be in the middle of nowhere as well.
In the middle with a huge house.
Do you really need 5 bedrooms?
Yeah.
Can't
Because you can afford it,
Yeah.
it's cheaper, and
Yeah.
it must be very tempting to do that. But
Yeah.
you've got to think long term, haven't you?
The size of the property we've got now, it's big enough, but it doesn't demand too much when we're here to maintain it. Yes, we've got maintenance to do on it, and we've got stuff to.
We've got a
But
house,
it's
it's
not-
always
yeah,
going to be
but
maintenance.
it's not overwhelming. It's good.
do it.
Do it.
That's the only difficult thing now, is anybody coming now, unless they're retired, can't actually live here, can they? I don't think.
They can if they meet the criteria.
Do you know what the
Income.
criteria is? I
my
don't
gosh.
know.
It's basically how much you earn.
How
Yeah.
much you-
Yeah. If you can bring money with you,
Yeah.
and it's like that in a lot of
30,
countries, isn't it?
No, it's actually quite low, isn't it? It's relatively low.
I don't know.
But it's money based.
And also, but the French authorities are there's noises about making immigration more difficult, in the sense that they will up the requirement for your language skills if you want to live here permanently.
Oh, right.
So, because we spoke to Sharon the other day, and she said, "Well, thank goodness I've got here before they've done that."
Yeah.
But they are
But
saying
that's if
that
you want to
need
become
a resident,
you know, a friend, yeah,
Oh, right,
resident,
resident
French
citizen, yeah.
Yeah, but I think resident.
You know, but yeah, I think the
Possibly,
fact
yeah.
Yeah, and making it more difficult for you to bring family members over to be with you. And that is so reminiscent of what's happening in the UK, but that seems to be happening across Europe, unfortunately. There's this swing to the right, and sorry we're getting political, but I mean it's a reality.
Am I right as well? And from what I can remember, what Duncan said, you can't come over and work here now either. You can't even. I don't think even with a work visa. So basically, it's a certain age group that they're allowing to come in.
Yeah.
I mean, I know if you're retired, they're fine with that because you've got a regular income with your pension and things like that. But if you're lucky enough to retire early and you've got a lot of money behind you, then that's probably going to have to be a fine as well. But why would you come into a country without some money with you? You know, it's just. They're not going to let you just come in and give it to you for free.
But I think it's like, you know, if your intention is to come over in your 30s, well, 20s, 30s, 40s, to work, I think that's where there are, you know, regulations that previously wouldn't have had to think about.
Yeah.
And I do think
But that's
whether you to keep this sort in, but I have also read that there are calls for, and it isn't just for the Brits, it's for other people, I think it's for Parisians, it's for all sorts of people, but a quota on people having second homes, so they manage it.
That's departmental based, isn't it? So I dare say that, you know, for example, in Dordogne or somewhere very popular with tourists and second homeowners.
And what do you mean by that?
They will only allow a certain percentage of homes to be second homes.
Right.
So, but that doesn't apply just to Brits. That would apply to Parisians wanting to buy a second home in the country.
Oh,
so
okay.
You have the argument in places like Cornwall that the people in Cornwall cannot afford to live there because the outsiders have pushed the property prices up so
Yes,
much. And I think that's what's happening in France. So,
but whether that comes off or not, we don't know yet. And also, I suspect it will depend on where you want to go. You know, if it's a tourist trap area where it's 90% Brits, or 90% Germans or Dutch.
Whatever.
I think that's where that may happen.
Well, talking about that, I mean, there was when we first came here, and we was at a rep house, I mean, a local businessman. He was sort of had a little bit of a grumble in front of us about Brits buying property here because he was saying it's forcing the price of the house up. But we said surely it's relevant, isn't it? If you're that means you're going to get more for your house, so you have more money to buy another house. And couldn't really understand why he was griping about it, really.
I guess first-time buyers, it's always the first-time buyers. It's more
yes.
Yeah, but again, certainly this area, it's not.
There's so many empty properties.
And there's so many empty properties.
Yes, if anything.
What our neighbours like about the fact is, okay, we're not here permanently, but we spend a lot of time here. We've stopped a house falling down. And if you look around the village, there are at least a dozen houses that are crumbling.
Do you know, I'm probably so used to them, I probably don't notice it. The only black main one on the main
road,
road, that's the worst one.
And if you go into Lassay and walk around Lassay,
there's a lot for sale at the moment,
but a lot that are just boarded up and crumbling.
It depends on how high a proportion of expats are living in a particular region. I can imagine the more, or the higher the proportion, then perhaps the more resentment there might be, because inevitably make it more expensive.
Yeah,
but that isn't just about expats, it's about anyone owning a second
overseas people coming into
but also Parisians buying property. So, people in Cornwall complain about Londoners pushing property prices up and the locals can't afford it.
Well, since COVID, there's been a lot of Parisians that have bought in the countryside, basically.
Which is, at the end of the day, all you've got to do is that wherever you go, wherever you buy, is you make an effort to engage with the local people and not exist in a bubble.
With Ralph, what do you need to do if you're coming over with a dog on a regular basis? What do you have to do?
Post-Brexit, if you're bringing a dog over, every trip you make, you have to have an animal health certificate issued by your local vet in the UK. You have to get that at least 10 days before you travel. It can be valid for 3 months, but it only allows you one trip, i.e. out and back. It is going to cost you anything.
There's rabies vaccine as well required, and a lot of vaccines.
But the dog has to be vaccinated against rabies. That has to be done a month, I think 21 days to a month before you travel. And the animal health certificate is about 10 pages long, and the vet has to sign it.
Really?
It's an enormous document. Yeah, every trip.
And that's
every trip. And you're looking at around about anything between £130 and £200, depending on the vet.
Do they expect the dog's health to change that much then in between?
No, it's just that we, as part of the post-Brexit deal, we did not negotiate the pet passport system. Because Britain didn't want to be ruled by any courts.
Having said that, what we've been, I don't know whether we're being very lucky or what, but we've managed to persuade the vets locally to give our dog a passport
in France.
Largely because we come, regularly, I guess.
See, and that's another thing, like we said about the restaurants and shops, and that's another thing. Get to know your vet.
Yeah. So we have a French dog now. We have a French dog.
Ralph is not. Ralph,
of course, yes.
Ralph
he's got a French passport.
Yes. Ralph is not only registered with the French with the British authorities and on the system in Britain. He's also registered in France on the French kind of registration system for dogs, and has got his rabies vaccinations here, so that he's very much. But then, like I say, we spend anything between 3 to 4, maybe up to 5 months of the year, and that is the reason that they allowed us to have the pet passport, because we spend so much time here and we have the property.
And I think the other thing is if you initially when you first buy the house, I guess. You're not going to get a pet passport.
You may not get it for ages.
So it's every time you come, and also it's per animal. So if you've got 2 dogs, it's twice the price.
I've heard of someone who comes over with 3 dogs. Can you imagine that?
It's a hugely expensive thing to have to do. but it's still cheaper than kennels. I guess that's the
only.
what you have to
Yeah,
do.
well, I was just thinking that. Yeah.
If you come here for a month and you pay £145 to bring your dog, if you left your dog in the UK in a kennels, you're going to be paying what, 20 quid a day. It's going to be far more expensive.
And the stress involved, blah 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 blah. We are lucky, but I think also it is the downside of Brexit, isn't it? Bitter and twisted, or that's the way it is. Take it on.
I mean, we talked about hospitals and that with you. But I mean, has Ralph had to go to the vet?
Oh yeah.
While he's been here, and Mitch, with your job before, so cost-wise, how have you found that?
Well, it's about how much is it? The worming. Every time we go back, we have to get him wormed.
We're paying about
45,
50 euros.
What, in UK or
no, here?
Yeah. So how much is it in UK?
Well, he doesn't have to be wormed to come.
Of course not. Sorry, yes.
But we took him to Ralph ate a wild mushroom that was poisonous.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And so we had to take him to the vets in an emergency, and they were fantastic, I have to say.
They looked after
really
it, but in actual fact, they were actually slightly cheaper.
Slightly cheaper.
They were very much cheaper.
Very much cheaper.
Well, that's the opinion I've got from most people with pets, that it is cheaper here. Obviously, now I mean, we found that when we had our cat, but we haven't got a pet now, so I've lost track totally of costs.
Which is part of the reason that we get his rabies vaccination done here. It also means that we're not just using them. We're actually, to get the pet passport, we're actually. The dog's being cared for here. He's on the French system. The other thing I find in France is that, and that comes in terms of both using the vet and maybe tradespeople and contacting them. If you use email, I think in the UK we have this expectation that within a fairly short time you will get a response. Sometimes in France it can be 3, 4, 5 days. And you kind of go, I wonder if they're doing anything about this.
But you do worry that you just sitting on a desk somewhere or something,
And checkbooks. And still use checkbooks regularly.
People still use checkbooks in supermarkets.
Yeah.
But yes, it's that.
That's getting less and less. I will say they are stopping it very soon.
But they say use email to contact us, and you can wait 3, 4 days. And I've sometimes gone, I'm really sorry. Have we sorted this? Yes.
I think you've got to chase up sometimes. I mean, I had the same thing with my driving licence here. It was going for a long time, and because I'd done it while my existing licence was in date. Meanwhile, it had run out, and I couldn't go anywhere. So, as soon as I'd done that, my licence arrived within a week.
I think it's part of why we don't want to live in France permanently. Is this idea that it is so very different but familiar, but very different as well. And personally, we like the difference. Long may that continue, as far as I'm concerned.
What we feel is we get the best of both worlds.
There
are things about Britain that I cannot stand at the moment, and politics. And there are things that I probably, if I sit back, it's like I've mentioned some of the things that I'm talking about in relation to immigration and so on. It is very similar to Britain in terms of the arguments that are going on there that people are having. But when we're in France, we don't listen to the news so much in France. Therefore, we don't know what's going on. So we can be quite...
Yeah. I don't, and that's one that, ignorance is bliss sometimes. You just think you can't understand it. The news is there if you want to watch it. But if I watched it, I probably wouldn't understand it anyway, and I think it's bliss.
And I think that's why sometimes, I think actually whenever we have picked up news or whatever, my goodness me, the same things that are happening in Britain are happening here as well, to be honest. I think, the rise of the right wing, immigration, economic problems.
There is so much that is very familiar about both cultures, but also things that are very different. And it's that difference that we enjoy.
I did touch on this at the weekend, you don't have to answer it, but I'm saying, as a gay couple, have you had any problems?
No. None whatsoever.
No, I mean, and you do find there's lots of people in the same situation as well, isn't there now? So it's. But once upon a time, it probably would have been different, the same as racism, isn't it?
But we thought when we moved into this village here and the village in the UK, we both thought, I wonder what the reaction is going to be. And in both instances, no problems. Whether people behind our backs say things, but we know that you had a conversation with Natalie and Leon, and Natalie said, as long as they're happy.
Oh, yes.
And I think also, I think again it boils down to, I think if you're kind, you're polite, and you're respectful of people, then
They're usually okay.
now if
Well, it's not like there's no French gay couples, is it? I mean, but
and there are idiots
I'm
everywhere.
curious, in the countryside sometimes people can be more
conservative, even with the small c.
Exactly.
But it's like Hugo and Christelle. The first time I met Christelle, and she came into this house, you weren't here, and she suddenly asked about my wife, and I said, I don't have a wife. And she sort of went, oh, I'm sorry. But she realised that, but the welcome we get from both of them when we turn up, if they're there when we arrive, we get a big hug out of Christelle, who comes up and shakes our hand. And we shouldn't really be saying, having to say, that's brilliant. But it is, we just accept.
But it's the same with us.
You get
We're
idiots
still really
everywhere.
happy.
You get idiots everywhere. And to be honest with you, at the moment, in the UK, we don't get any hassle either.
No, we don't get it here.
It's if it happens because people are idiots. It's not been a major feature for us, has it?
No, it's an issue of. It's not even an issue of. It's not just whether you're gay, but it's whether you're as a Brit and you're living here, or living here part time and owning a house here. Do people resent you for that? Well, we've not had any resentment on any of those counts.
And that's the same across the board. I mean, I think any Brit coming over, if they need to make the effort, they need to try the language and everything, and then they'll be a lot more accepted. Don't immediately feel that they're going to be anti-British or anti-gay or whatever, because it's just not it. It's probably something some people provoke. So
and also things are different, and if you criticise it, I guess if you're going, well, this is ridiculous that the shop's shut for 2 hours for lunch. And racist and sexist.
We did have once somebody shouted at us when they went by in a car. But
here, really?
Yeah, not so much this part, but somewhere in France, and they didn't like the fact that we were Brits.
I think it was because we were British rather than.
I was just going to say, Well, as your phone's ringing, I'm just going to thank you anyway. Thank you for taking part.
That's all right. I hope you can.
It's been a long time coming, this one, hasn't it? Okay, Frank has just said a couple of things he wanted to add. You're talking about getting a humidifier.
Getting a humidifier, yeah. We've got an old house, and it does, if you're not here for long periods of time, it does get a bit sort of damp and humid in there. But we found that a decent dehumidifier soon brings the levels down. The house soon warms up as a result. It's much better.
Are these expensive to buy?
180 euros, something like that.
Well, it's a lot cheaper than the damage that could happen.
But it really, the moment you sort of get the humidity levels down, then the house is much warmer. So after a couple of days, we get the humidity down, and the house is warm, and it's all variable, and it warms up quicker when you put the fires on and put the log burner on, or whatever. So it's a really good investment if you've got an old house.
And another thing, do you have any tips on, is it your financial side of things?
Yeah, if you're buying a house here, you will need to have a bank account in France. So get yourself a French bank account. We went through Crédit Agricole Normand, and they do a Brickline account, so you can have access to people who speak English, but it's a French bank with an English twist. So we do have a French bank account, and we have online facilities, and it means that all of our services are paid for direct from our bank account. So we have standing orders to pay for our taxe d'habitation, taxe foncière, the electricity. That's all done by standing orders, so we don't have to worry about making sure that we cover everything. The two bills that we have to pay either by going online, and that's to do with the water and the déchetterie. So that's the only two that we get a bill for, and we have to pay for that. And they send the bills for the water and for the déchetterie to our UK address. And last year we missed it, and then got a final demand saying if you don't pay, we're going to cut you off. But you've got to be aware that if you get things coming through from France, that you check it and pay it and don't get it lost.
Yeah.
But if you can set your bank account up in France, you can get standing orders to pay for everything. It just makes life a lot easier. Now, when it comes to transferring money to France, we use a company called Corpay, which is basically a London city-based company which deals in financial transactions, so that if you're wanting to transfer money abroad for any reason, they do it for you. The company we're using, Corpay, has actually given us the best rate usually when it comes to the exchange rate. You order your euros, you pay them in sterling, they transfer it to your bank account in France, and it all happens within 24 hours.
I'll have to try and find the link for that and put that in the
I mean,
description.
there are
I'm
others,
sure
aren't
I've
there?
seen
There are other companies that do it. Your own bank will do it. But what happens is with Corpay, if the rate of exchange is 117 euros to the pound, they will give you 113.9 or 113.95 euros to the pound. So they don't actually charge you a commission; they just give you slightly less. But we have discovered that is the best way to change money and get the pounds. If you go to your tourist office or your bank, you're likely to get charged a commission, and they may not pay you such a good rate. So it's always advisable to look at the rates that people are offering and what they charge. And we think we found one of the best so far.
But there are others.
But there are others. But check them out. Check what you get for the exchange. And they don't seem to mind how much you want to change. 500, a couple of grand, 50 grand. If you're buying and you need money in France, they will do it for you.
Oh, well, thanks for those tips, Frank.
That's all right.